2021 is almost gone. Thank goodness. Ugh. What a horrible year. Alright, I was playing around. That year wasn't exactly that bad, but I had some good things in my personal life and all these things, but like always, you know that I always play it out because being the second part of my annual reminiscent of my movie experience of 2021. Now that I already talked about the best of the year, now I think it's time to talk about the losers of the year. This year, my God, today was a little bit easier to find some of the worst because I did saw kind of like a fair share of bad ones. Although I did skip out some others that people still think that they're gonna be bad. What are some that I skip? Like, for example, what comes into my mind that I skip? I know there was this movie named Karen. I actually wanted to watch it for the sake of, curiosity, but thank goodness that I skipped it. I heard from a lot of people that it's really bad. I also want to tell you that I did saw Mortal Kombat, and right at the get-go, I will say that Mortal Kombat escaped this year because I saw things that are worse. Some did escape this list, but either way, I was kind of like thinking from here to there which are kind of like the movies I enjoyed the least. Well, honestly, I would say that sometimes the benefit of a bad movie sometimes is that if they're done really bad or unintentionally, then comes off as hilarious, and this kind of doesn't deserve to be on the spot. But these are mostly kind of like movies that either infuriated me, either they infuriated others, or movies that I pick mostly because they're harmful for watchers. And also because, well, sometimes it kind of proves that Hollywood is not learning from their mistakes, which is something that I've been noticing every single year now. Oh, don't get me wrong, I still have plans to watch the Oscars if there's an Oscars, because man, this year of the Oscar was a total mediocrity. And let's hope that we get. Sometimes I like to see how deep it goes until it finally rises up. Just like Buster Moon says, if you are on rock bottom, the only way to go up is up. But anyway, I've been dragging this, and it's time for me, which are my top 10 worst movies of the year. And like always, before like that, I have to mention my 3 honorary worst. The movies that either I couldn't fit on the top 10, or they didn't infuriate me as much as it is, or in some cases it's not as dangerous as other movies that there is. But here it comes. My first honorary worst movie of the year. This is a movie that I gotta put a little bit of a flame shield if anyone's hearing, because I know I gave it kind of a little bit of a positive review on this one, and I know that there's people who is holding this movie in high regard, but honestly, the more I thought about it, I had no choice. My first honorary worst movie of the year is Ghostbusters Jr. Yeah, I know, it's Afterlife, but I call it Ghostbusters Jr. And I am aware, I gave it a kind of like a semi-positive on my review, but this is one of those movies that the more I think about it, the more I kind of go back into it, the more I think how it was. It gets worse and worse and worse every single time, because sometimes I feel like there was a kind of like a big hype into it that people are kind of like blindsided. But I mostly blame it because of how atrocious Ghostbusters 2016 was. And for the benefit of the doubt, Ghostbusters Jr. will never fall into being worse as Ghostbusters 2016. But once when you think about some of the elements that it has, you kind of I begin to kind of double think it, and somehow it comes up as manipulative in one way or another. I mean, the cards of a movie were played right, but you can't deny that it's still a little bit too dependent on the success of the first Ghostbuster, to the point that it rethreads a lot of these elements, and it didn't need a ghoster. I am also in the minority saying that our main protagonist kind of suck. Yeah, kind of suck. She wasn't exactly a great actress. I know that she was trying to portray kind of like a child version of Egon, but that kind of makes the character a little bit uninteresting and kind of boring and awkward to look. And also, I wanted to also talk about the regards of the ending of the movie, in which people find it kind of like how can I say, sad and emotion and all these things, and I agree, but once I kind of put a little bit of my, how can I say, my moral compass a little bit into it, it feels kind of like horribly manipulative to bring back someone who is dead and just CGI it, just to bring out some kind of emotion, in which up to this day it's still debatable, since this is kind of like, if this is kind of like an unethical move to bring back deceased actors to bring out for something, to bring out some kind of emotion or something like that. The more I begin to think here and there, I thought that maybe putting Ghostbusters Jr. in kind of like in the worst, and putting it in the top 10 will be unfair, because again, some of the things it's done right, but maybe giving it an honorary worth. I thought that this is mostly kind of like a warning sign. I give it more kind of like a warning saying that, yeah, you did right, but there's some elements that feel that it doesn't, that when you think about it kind of calmly, some things won't hold up. But if you like it, it's okay. It's okay. It does, at least it doesn't go Ghostbusters 2016. That I'll give it. So, are we cool with that? Yeah. My number 2, this movie almost escaped my top 10. But if I didn't see more movies that made me mad, that could have been one of my top 10. But my number 2 is this artsy movie named Lamb. Boy, that I wanted this movie to be good, but it was so boring and so uneventful that nothing happened. And talk about a waste premise. I mean, how do you escape? How do you make a movie about a couple that somehow have a sheep that gives birth to an anthropomorphic sheep, which has the body of a human and the head of a lamb? How do you make that boring? Because you had the cards right, you had the premise, you had the idea, but then this Uncle character comes and it transforms into another kind of movie and nothing relevant happened. It's kind of like, what the hell is happening? It's so slow. And then once that uncle is gone, then it feels like the movie is like, oh yeah, we have a premise, right? And I wish I could have, you have something good, but then you stretch it out. It's kind of feel like it could have worked as a short, but no, it was a drag-on piece of boredom. Sorry, but honestly, this is no. But at least again, it escaped because it's nothing offensive. It had the potential, but this is no. This is something that is not worth a lamb on the slaughter. And of course, my third honorary worst movie of the year. This one also escaped. This one also escaped from being one of the worst because that one could almost infuriate me. And the one that I am giving it is none other to Army of the Dead. Wow! Coming from Zack Snyder, who just gave us his version of the Justice League. Then you come up with this one that kind of proves that Zack Snyder, he can't write. He can't do. He has some directorial shot, but others' talents, no. I think that he's a little bit overrated in my opinion. Yeah, I know that I do like 300. I do like Watchmen, but man, I think that people are a little bit too. And a little bit too much with their Justice League. I mean, it's fine and that, but if you want to see Zack Snyder at his worst, this is Army of the Dead. It's basically a basic zombie movie in which they added a heist. But unfortunately, what ruins it is that it has some of the most annoying character that you could get, like the racist. The racist patrol guy. We also have this daughter character who she has her stupid motivation to get there, and she's like, no, I'm going there, or something like that. And she basically, this is a character that basically ruins everything. It ruins everything, and at least I'll give the movie credit that at least it shows that her stupidity brought back it came back to bite her, because it is her fault that everything fell down. I mean, technically she even failed. Which is sad because I wanted to support this movie mostly because what was it, Juan Bautista? He showed a little bit of his kind of like chops for acting or something like that, but you have to endure this whole movie, and also, you know, the zombies that were kind of having some kind of interesting aspect, but not much. But it kind of shows some of the worst aspects of a zombie movie as well as a heist movie. But mostly, again, is that daughter character that technically ruins everything. I know what they wanted to do, but sometimes people are kind of expecting that there is a little bit of logic and some thought into movie making. And so honestly, I didn't catch on. I wouldn't even join this army for what it's worth. Oh yeah, I also want to apologize for one thing, that I know that this one's gonna be in the top of many worst movies, but I might say that I was lucky enough to not watch Thunder Force. I heard its reputation, of course, And also I was lucky that I haven't watched Home Sweet Home Alone. Considering that I saw trailers out of it, let me give you a little bit of a rundown. Thunder Force, I'm not a big fan of Melissa McCarthy. I kind of think that she is basically kind of like a second generation of Roseanne. And Home Sweet Home Alone 2, no, Home Sweet Home Alone. Why would I bother watching a rehash of a beloved classic? Especially, and I've been hearing that that the kid is really unlikable, and man, and I thought that this year Home Alone 3 was bad. And I already told you that I watched Home Alone 4 years ago. I hated it. I'm not gonna even bother with Home Alone 5, and honestly, I'm not gonna even watch any more Home Alone movies for my Christmas specials. Okay, good. Now I dragged this out a little bit more. So it's time for me to tell you which are the 10 movies that I hated this year. And number 10, this is a movie that it shouldn't be there. It shouldn't be there on my top 10. But you did something that it made you automatically go there. The movie I'm talking about is none other than Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie, I wanted to forgive it. I thought it was doing fine. Never mind that I was trying to tolerate Awkwafina. Awkwafina was annoying and bland as hell as a character. I didn't like that character, but you know what? I could tolerate her in some ways. I was like, okay, fine. I know that Shang-Chi wanted to try to appeal to a country that the more I watch about it, the more isolated it's getting. I recently heard that that country is gonna ban Steam. The next thing, they're gonna build this giant wall. If that happens, I'm not gonna be surprised. And of course, this movie is no exception, and it was almost getting banned. But honestly, I was about to root this movie. I mean, there were some good action scenes. Shang-Chi wasn't exactly the most interesting of all the Marvel characters, but I could dig it. Even thought all these 10 rings was pretty much an excuse to bring back, the Mandarin after they fuck it up on Iron Man 3. But then, speaking of Iron Man 3, they fuck it up by bringing back its worst part. They brought back Ben Diskins as the so-called Mandarin, and he had this cute faceless butt monster. Oh my God. I wanted to forgive you, but you had one annoying character, and that was Awkwafina. Why you brought two? And it was the king of the worst characters of Marvel. And for that reason, I couldn't... This is the reason why Shang-Chi became unwatchable. And once Ben Kingsley appears, and you have this character, I even loudly say, oh, no! And then I wanted to get out. I wanted to get out of the movie theater. I can't stand this character. I can't stand because he was a symbol of what? He's the symbol of... he's basically the symbol of restraint of Marvel. That you don't want to offend people. But I know that Mandarin is kind of like a Fu Manchu character. I know everything, but you know what? at least he kind of had kind of like a reason why he could be Iron Man's nemesis. But then you brought this guy, and I couldn't handle it. Thank goodness you're just number 10 because of that. Because honestly, the other movie has their own reasons, of course. And let's say that from this, it's going downhill. Number 9. Number 9, this was a movie that I almost didn't make it out alive. And that one is In the Earth. And I mean it. This is one of the first few, probably the first time that I felt that a movie was literally trying to kill me. Because it has kind of like an abusive, how can I say, way to use photosensitive scenes. I felt like this movie almost gave me a seizure. And it doesn't help that that the movie also was a little bit kind of boring. And which also the story was also quite a little bit interesting. This is one of the first movies that I saw that kind of felt like it was kind of mocking the quarantine, the pandemic, but and also I still want to give it credit because there's this guy who probably he has it really bad with his feet, and if you can't handle that, man, he's just cringy. But still, you had to sit through this long movie that sometimes wants to get a little bit artsy, and it gets too photosensitive that it almost make me blind. It literally almost. I don't suffer, photosensitive. Photosensitive narcolepsy or no photosensitiveness. I don't have seizures with that, but I felt like this one was almost near of me doing that, and which is funny because I know that the movie theater did indeed warn me about it, but I never expected that much. I mean, at least in some other movies, like for example, The Incredibles 2, at least despite the warning. At least it's kind of like for, let's say, like a minute or so. But this one, I think that is kind of like 3 or 5 minutes, or even longer of that. And so much of that, I don't know what to say. Just that. It's just a movie that almost literally tried to kill me. Well, I gotta continue there because. Or else I will stay there just saying how much of this movie is whatever. Okay, here it goes. My number 8, probably it's not gonna be a mini list, but I think that it kind of deserves it to be there. And my number 8 worst movie of the year is none other than Raya and the Last Airbender. I mean, Raya and the Last Dragon. Whew. Raya and the Last Dragon. I mean, boy, that my eyes are not having some sense of appeal to Aquafina. Again, I don't hate her, but what is it with her? What is wrong? But yeah, this Disney animated film. I know that some people might like it or something like that, and you might be thinking, hey, it wasn't a bad movie, it has a story or something like that. Yes, it's badly written, but the characters are likable, some of them, but the dragon was annoying, but he has a cute message about trust. Yeah, and that's where the biggest problem this movie has. The movie's message about trust is poorly handled. So much that I consider this movie extremely naive and extremely dangerous. this movie doesn't even understand trust. And the way it was handled in the story is poorly misguided. Imagine, we had this character who, she befriends this other character and thinking that it's their friend, and they only met like for, what was it, 5 minutes? That's not how friendship works. And then they have kind of like this, that they're kind of like battling between each other because they kind of hate their guts or something like that because of the events. And then comes this dragon saying that, oh, you're gonna talk to her, you're gonna be friends or something like that because they trust, I have kind of like trust or something like that. That's how not how it works, especially because this character, she's so naive that she almost gets herself killed by horrible people. And they still want us to sympathize with this character. And this character doesn't have this arc that maybe not everyone deserves their trust. And even the ending kind of say that you gotta trust them. Trust. This movie is hammering your head about trust. And honestly, it's not as, there's moments where you have no choice but to trust and everything, but forced trust doesn't work. It's a total gamble. And it's not an easy thing that you could make it into an animated movie, especially that you want to make it kind of like family friendly. But unfortunately, we have this is kind of like this naive way of thinking that if someone takes this movie at heart, wholeheartedly, this is technically someone who didn't actually live in the real world. I mean, yes, there are bad things, and we have to get strong, of course, to to make ourselves strong, to move on with our lives and something like that. And sometimes we also have to build our trust and everything. But this trust, you don't give it. You never give trust. You don't give blind trust. You earn it. And it's something that has to be work not only for 5 minutes, but years. Yeah, I like the design of the dragon, but sometimes the Aquafina character can get a little bit on the nerve. Also, I don't like, her human design. That kind of ruins it, especially me considering that I love dragons. And so, because of that, and also, as that movie for also having this people, going against one YouTuber because she kinda just said that about her comparison with The Last Airbender when a lot of people do. I'm not gonna go too much into detail with that, but still you can see the similarities there. So because I found that movie kind of like dangerous on its message, this is why I had no choice to put it at number 8. And continuing on, I think I've been drinking a little bit too much. My number 7 for worst movie of the year is another bore fest of a movie, The Eternals. Talk about a movie that it takes an eternity to watch. Wow, yes, that was a whole bore fest of a movie. I know that it wanted to be a little bit different from other Marvel movies, but wow, that this felt like it dragged on and on and on, and the characters weren't as charismatic as you could ever see, except for kind of like 1 or 2. Some people they compare it to DC Cinematic Universe movie, but honestly, at least in the DC Cinematic Universe, at least as bad as they are, at least there's some camp level in it that I'm gonna give it credit. But this one, no. They took the director of Nomadland and wanted to become a little bit kind of like more epic, artsy, kind of like spiritual or something like that. But I felt like it wasn't exactly a terrible idea, but the execution was really bad. We got too much characters that they wanted to put too much focus. Then motivations and well, character development are mostly done by exposition, and sometimes they come out of nowhere. It felt like a nothing film. It feels like an experience that well, for the few moments that happened, I just kept being bored. And nothing. Felt like epic, and coincidentally it was overly ambitious also. I mean, because some of the scenes, like for example the cosmos and all these things, digitally it looks great, but man, that even story-wise, there's so much that I want to talk about it, but it's gonna take a long time. I did already mention about the Sprite character, how she kind of became a villain out of nowhere. You feel more sympathetic to the villains, the so-called villains, let's say, instead of all this. But now that I think about it, I think that this is what happens when you become a little bit more ambitious in the style of Watchmen. Because this is like Watchmen, but without the campy stuff. And that makes this an eternal bore. See what I did there? Okay, what do we got? Number 6. Okay, people, it's time for you to take your medication, because I'm gonna talk about my number 6, which is The Matrix Resurrections. Take your red pill, guys, because here is my absolute truth about this film. I found this film self-loathing. It's about artists that they technically felt like ungrateful that the fans they supported this, and they created this mockery of filmmaking, in which not only that, it felt uninspired, I'll say. I was open-minded to it. I still like Keanu Reeves and all these things, and I already told, it just on my review, I already told you that even in its ups and downs, I am appreciative of the Matrix films. I haven't seen I am not exactly a 100% fanboy of that. But at least to get a grasp for this movie, I gave myself a little bit of a service and watched all 4 movies, which includes the Animatrix. And I gave kind of like my opinion. Even one of them, and funny enough, one of them I did mention that Reloaded doesn't hold up for me, mostly because I found out some choppy elements that you're not gonna get it unless you play the Enter the Matrix. Well, I have found out that Resurrections is also guilty of that, because it also feels like it's gonna be dependent on on not only the story of the Matrix Online, which I never knew it existed. It also, I felt like it's gonna be also dependent on the upcoming The Matrix Awakens video game that is coming. So you did it again. And I wouldn't have minded the whole meta humor that you were gonna go, that meta storyline that it kind of was kind of cringy and almost a little bit on the first part of the movie. But 2 things that you didn't do. First of all, you didn't go all out. You had to stop to make this other movie that you felt like you had something, but then you didn't. And there's also that the first part of the movie is a total rehash of the first movie. Total rehash. and still acting with this self-loathing middle-aged syndrome, which, funnily enough, I know that I've been complaining about Ghostbusters Junior's dependence on nostalgia. I'm now complaining this one on nostalgia, being dependent on the nostalgia, to the point that it even flashes us some scenes of the other movies. But I'm not against nostalgia. It's how you use it. I mean, if Spider-Man did it right, this one did it wrong. And it doesn't also help that everything feels so uneventful, that it has all these actors who are miscast or somehow are becoming characters that we don't technically care. They're only sidelined into the shadows. We also have that you don't feel the stakes. You feel everyone. There's no blood, no heart, or that makes you feel like they're in danger. I mean, in Matrix Reloaded, there's a guy who falls and it gets impaled by spikes. This one, no one dies, no one gets shot. All it is PG-13 thing. And although, again, at least I gave out myself kind of like a desperate chuckle out of watching this swarm of people falling down those buildings, and I just wish they exploded. Because otherwise, it feels uninspired. It was an uninspired movie that it felt so self-loathing. Are we good? So we continue on. My number 5 is Black Widow. This became, for me, one of my worst Marvel movies there is. And this one came close to hating it as Iron Man 3. Let alone also Spider-Man 3, which also Spider-Man 3 is not on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but come to think of it, a lot of these movies, it also comes because of executive meddling or something like that. But here's the thing with Black Widow. This is a movie that, first of all, it came out too late. Not because of the pandemic that we had in 2020. Because, okay, that was one factor. But also, many people were asking for this movie until you kill off Black Widow in Endgame. And then you got this movie, kind of like a flashback movie, and I was like, it was about time, but you kill off the character, so where's the suspense? Okay, there's no suspense in comic book movies, at least for the sake of it. But either way, ignoring that was kind of like a big, shallow movie. This characters, I didn't feel sympathetic. It was they were as dysfunctional as the Simpsons themselves. Well, Simpsons when they weren't likable. So I didn't like any of them. They also had this Harvey Weinstein type of villain in which people think that it was a little bit hammered into your head about all this. Some of the moments I didn't find it. I found him boring, uneventful. But personally, also the biggest punch on my head, it was how they treated the Taskmaster. The Taskmaster was supposed to be kind of like this witty character who he's supposed to be kind of like a rival to Deadpool, but no, they made a gender swap. They made a gender swap type of Taskmaster, which it could have gotten away if it wasn't for that this character became so bland, boring, and it has kind of like the worst makeup you could ever seen for this character. So, man, Ryan Reynolds, if you hear me out, please please, if you have a Deadpool 3 in your mind, or that upcoming Deadpool 4, if you want to stretch it out, please take the Taskmaster and do it right. Although I gotta admit, Black Widow, I always thought she was a little bit overrated. She never caught my attention a whole lot. I mean, Scarlett Johansson does a great job, but she wasn't exactly my favorite of the Marvel heroes. So this was a missed chance that came out a little bit too late. And with lots of things that kind of made my roll my eyes out, this is a movie that it lost me so much that the movie was even so bad that even Scarlett Johansson sued it for different reasons, not because it sucked, but man, you get what you got. And speaking of movies that actually, here comes actually movies that actually legitimately piss me off. Number 4. God, I hate this movie. My number 4 is Flora and Ulysses. This is a movie that it wallows itself on calling itself cynical. But man, you wanna know who is cynical? Me. I'm more cynical than this movie. This is Hallmark Disney Channel, or in this case Disney Plus cynical. And it's just as cutesy and barf inducing that is that ever been. And and for a movie that it wanted to wallow itself that is about a superhero movie, it got off. The main character, I hated her. She was too cutesy, and she was bland also. She called herself as cynical, but nothing about her felt cynical. And you want to know cynical people? You're gonna what? Jeez, you know what? It's hard for me to talk about this movie, especially even when there's this crap CGI squirrel that gets superpowers, and man, that it feels like shenanigans. I always complain that when you have live action people, it's hard to swallow when they act like buffoons or cartoon characters, because there is kind of like this subjective feeling that when you watch live action people acting like idiots, they're boring, or you feel like the cringe. Cartoon has somehow this magic of being flexible. And the way they treated the blind kid in this movie is god-awful. They wanted to play out as jokes, but I felt pity for this kid. This is not how you treat this blind kid. A blind kid that goes around almost everywhere without any supervision, not even a watchdog. And he's a kid. And they play him out kind of like a joke or something like that. It doesn't work on a movie that wants to be cute. And also there's this kind of like the villain with his ridiculous reason why he wants to capture the squirrel and all these things. Oh God. This movie is not making me more cynical. This movie is making me more, how can I say, more mean, I'll say. It's bringing out, and the more I think about it, the more I'm beginning to think that the world sucks. I have nothing much to tell about this movie. I'll just skip to the next one. Out of the next one and the other ones, there's gonna be no difference on how cynical it is gonna make me. Well, here we are, my top 3 worst movies of the year. These are the ones that I absolutely hated and brought back brought the kind of like the worst feelings when you watch a movie. You wanted at least to find something to laugh at, but they fail. Because I'm just that kind of guy who sometimes even in a bad movie I can find something to laugh at. I mean, case in point, I watched this year The Christmas Dragon, which was horrible, but man, it was hilarious. But these ones, no. These are so bad that it's better off left forgotten. Even though Hollywood is, and some other people, they are not letting us. But what do I know? I have my own subjective opinions, and they have their own subjective feelings. So I was dreading for numbers for this film. I was dreading, especially considering that it felt like an idea, but somehow they made it worse. And I was kinda hopeful, but the more you think about that it was done, it kinda shows the biggest problems of the industry. And I already talked about major resurrections. This is actually part one of the blunders of Hollywood industries. But man, even thinking about it kind of depressed me. My number 3 is Space Jam: A New Legacy. I love the Looney Tunes. I like Space Jam, the first one. It's not a good movie, but there was something charming on the first movie, on that movie. But then they decided to play it ball again. And while the idea is not exactly bad, god damn it, they screw everything. It just thought that the meta humor on Resurrections was bad. Wait until you see this one, that it wanted to be so meta that it became a big giant commercial. The other one is no different, but at least that one showed some restraints. This one, God, it was a big HBO Max ad, and it didn't help that LeBron James sucked. Michael Jordan, as bad as he was, at least he had some kind of charisma into it, and he played out some kind of like a nice character. But this one, they made LeBron James like the biggest asshole in the world, and a horrible father, and not just a horrible father, a horrible human being from start to finish. And the kid is no different. He's a total ungrateful kid that wanted to go there, but he's not happy with his house that has and all this technology that not even the best gamer in the world has it. And we got this villain called the Algorithm, who apparently LeBron James is against it, but the whole movie is hypocritical in itself. And then we brought back the Looney Tunes. The Looney Tunes, the Looney Tunes, well, I wish it could have been more about the Looney Tunes playing basketball instead of having LeBron James in it. And how narcissistic of this movie saying that LeBron James is the best of the world and everything. Oh, shut up. And as much as I wanted to forgive the 2D animation, then we got the 3D models of the Looney Tunes, in which are remarkable. They blend a little bit too much into the background that you kind of almost don't see them jumping or something like that, because you only felt too distracted of watching this whole CGI Comic-Con in the background. Libra and Jane doesn't get punished in the movie. This kid doesn't get punished in this movie. We got our ears punished because of this lame ass the notorious PIG. And of course, it wanted to go, it felt like so self-righteous to the point that it began to have excuses surrounding Lola Bunny and Pepe Le Pew. Which shut the fuck up. If you come up with those excuses about them, then why you have Rick and Morty? Why you have even kind of like the Clockwork Orange group there? Why you have, you know, it and all these things? Here's lesson 101. There's nothing bad, you know, making reference to, you know, R-rated stuff on family-friendly stuff, because, well, there's kind of like a chuckle and a charm out of it, but you have to kind of put some kind of spin into it in order to make it work. I mean, let's face it. When the short of Carrot Blanca, which is a parody of Casablanca, is much better than the Casablanca parody in this movie, this is where you fail. This is such a greedy, money-grabbing scheme, and so soulless and so void of anything that this movie is just a bad legacy for Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers, sometimes you have to know where to grow up and when not. And you made this big mistake. That was a total foul play. Not much I have to say. But let's continue before I broke another fuse, because I still have 2 more fuses to break. My number 2 is Disney doing still their live action shit. Cruella de Vil, well, you know what, I don't want to sing it. Another one of those lame attempts to make a notorious Disney villain, making it look like she's just misunderstood. You tried with Maleficent. It failed. Now, you tried with other character, with Disney Descendants. Fail. You tried now with Cruella. Fail. If I want to see kind of like a prequel of a villain, I want a Disney villain, I want to see them in their darkest moments. Like for example in Maleficent, make this character embrace the evil, because not every single character, like in reality, sometimes not every single person can be redeemable. And this one, not even this character is sympathetic. She's just a pompous, so high and mighty character. And yeah, they wanted to make her look, in order to make her look likable, they make her confront a villain that is kind of worse than her. And damn, even they kind of come up with these modern music that comes out of nowhere. We got some miscast characters, a lackluster story, and also for a character who embraces themselves for animal cruelty. She doesn't even do animal cruelty, and you almost had it. But it was a fake out. this. And stop. Disney, for the love of God, stop. I will take at least 5 more Raya and the Last Airbenders. I mean, I'll take more Raya, 4 more, or 5 Raya and the Last Airbender flops. Raya and the Last Dragon, I mean. 4 more Raya and the Last Last Dragon flops. More than your awful attempts on these Disney live-action films. And I know that you're gonna touch my favorite Disney movie. And once you do that, you're done. You're done in my respects. Do I look angry? Yes. Making me remember these movies? Yes. But you're gonna see me angry one more time. One more time, at least, to purge the evil on my being. Up to next year, where I can be all refreshed. Because these 2 movies were awful. I mean, 4. I mean, I hated all Florian releases as much as this year. But there's one movie that it shows everything that is wrong with human perception of art, being in animation, in live action, in the treatment of audience, both adults, children, old people, all of it. And I blame myself to watch this movie because I shouldn't have watched it, considering that it confronts something that I absolutely hate. But I did it to myself because of curiosity. But what I never expected is that it was gonna be one of the worst things that I ever seen. My number 1 worst movie of this year is Tom and Jerry the movie! This is how you treat your audience. You treat your audience in the first few minutes with a pigeon shitting on another pigeon. I shouldn't have watched this movie in the first place because I hate Tom and Jerry. I respect their legacy because they kind of perfectionized the art of slapstick in cartoons. But it also encouraged the stereotyping of evil cats. And I'm a cat lover somehow. And also it came a moment in which I saw something from Tom and Jerry that I was like, done. But then I decided to watch this movie because I was curious. I wanted to see where it goes because they wanted to have this ambition of 2D animated characters interacting with live action people. And this is technically this is one of their strikes. Because I already mentioned that when you mix cartoon shenanigans with live action characters or live action people, they don't work because there is this feeling of uncanniness that is hard to break. And come to think of it, Also Warner Brothers. Three times! Resurrections, Space Jam: A New Legacy, Tom and Jerry the movie. 3 strikes, Warner Brothers. 3 strikes that you screw up this year. I don't care how well you're gonna say, hey, that looks good, it looks well animated. No, that's no excuse. And that's no excuse. Again, with pigeons shitting into each other, and also Spike shitting on New York. What else? Tom and Jerry, unlikable. Really unlikable. I love the times I side with Tom, but this one, Jerry, come on, he was just a con artist. I mean, he was always a bad guy. Jerry was always a bad guy. Come to think of it. He was always kind of like the bad guy who always wins, even in the short. And then we got Chloe Morris. Chloe Morris. I struggle to remember her. And they wanted to make this character sympathetic, but she comes as a con artist and a total asshole. And in the first time we see her, she ruins this woman's life by stealing her resume. And this stupid guy, they don't notice that how can you accept a resume in which you can notice that it's torn apart? How? Because we live in cartoons and we are silly and shut the frick up. Not even the slapstick work. Because all the movie I felt loathing and just for cheap slapstick laughs that have no timing and no likability. And no evil act comes out unpunished. But also it's kind of like typical of Tom and Jerry most of the time. But I'm highly not recommend this movie. That was the worst thing. So cynical, so poor taste, so bad. And I know that there are Tom and Jerry fans into this world, and this comes off as kind of like a big slap in their face. And this kind of proves also that you underestimate your audience. Hollywood always underestimates that children are gonna enjoy watching cartoons because, well, look at this, it's hilarious. Look, when I had this bad experience with Encanto, you have to, Hollywood should have noticed, at least in their focus group, that children don't watch television. They have no focus. They don't see, and when you treat them like that, you treat them like idiots. You treat them with that, you treat them like the bad babysitter. So, and with that said, I will even stay kind of like a 30-minute long rant on Tom and Jerry this movie, in which yeah, there's another one that actually had a better plot, but you know what? No, Tom and Jerry is the biggest loser of this year. I hope if you want to make animated films, never take this as a reference. This was a total bomb. Well, that's it. I already purged with my best of the year and the worst of the year. So I apologize if you saw me angry, but this was a great way to purge the last answers of stuff that I kept me in there. But anyway, like always, in their good and their bad, we just hope that 2022 it brings us better things, but also bad things, because at least bad things it gives us some kind of spice into their life and something to talk about or fight about it. I mean, yeah. And the good things, of course, is because we also enjoy it. So, Happy New Year, everyone. See you in the next year.